All right, we are live. Welcome to Divine Farmer Health Podcast on this Thursday morning. We're delighted that you're joining with us. If you don't catch us live, we're always on our Divine Farmer Health YouTube channel. All these are recorded and put up there. If you want to share anything with a friend, this is where you want to point them. And I'm flying solo today. Jimmy's at a conference. And so I thought it would be a great day to share with you. I call it our story. It's my husband's and my story as far as how I got in the field of nutrition. And it starts a long time ago. So some of you may not even been born yet. But in 1982, my husband and I were in our 30s. I'm 7 years younger than him. I was 31, he was 38. And he was training for the San Francisco Marathon. We lived in Northern California. So he was a runner and he ran a lot. Like on a weekend, he'd run 13 miles just for a training run. And I was a fitness instructor. So that was in the era of the dance aerobics, which was the beginning of jazzercise and all that stuff. And me and a friend had a business, ran a dance aerobics business. So we were really into fitness, and we actually were into eating healthy even back then. We had a little organic garden in our backyard, and I'm pretty much made all my food from scratch. We didn't eat out a lot. I had little kids, 3 and 5-year-olds, little girls. And one morning in the shower, my husband noticed a lump right in here. And, he kind of paid attention to it. It didn't go away. And he'd noticed that his training had really dropped off as far as recovery. He wasn't recovering from his long runs as well. He also was waking up with night sweats in the middle of the night, which was really odd. So this lasted a couple of weeks, and he finally decided to go to the doctor. A doctor gave him some antibiotics, which would be the first, thinking it's a lymphatic infection, and, he has something in there. And a couple of weeks on antibiotics didn't do it. And so we had a pretty smart GP at that point. The fact that he actually decided to biopsy it at that point and not throw him on another round of antibiotics. So they biopsied the lump, and we got the phone call that changed our life forever. And that phone call said, you have stage 3B Hodgkin's disease, which is cancer of the lymphatic system. And, if you've had cancer, somebody who's had cancer, when you hear those 3 words, you have cancer, your whole world just comes to a screeching halt. Everything's turned upside down. And being so young at 38, it truly was incredibly shocking to think that he had cancer. So we started down the road of radiation, chemotherapy, and surgeries. And back in that time, when someone had lymphoma, they would radiate the whole body. Now they don't do that. But because we have a lymph gland back here on your neck, and you have a lymph gland on your ankle, and there are lymph glands throughout the whole body, they radiated the whole body. So what they did is they did 3 weeks of upper body radiation on him and 3 weeks of lower body radiation. So it was 6 weeks of radiation every single day. They radiated him. And then they gave him a little bit of a break. And then they decided to do a splenectomy. So your spleen is your largest lymph gland in your body. And it was fully involved with cancer. And he had a little bit of cancer in the liver. And so they took the spleen out, which you can live without your spleen. But they removed the spleen. So that was pretty major surgery, abdominal surgery, removing the spleen. They gave him, some time to recover from that. And then they started the chemotherapy. And the chemotherapy went on for about 1.5 years. And back then, when you'd get chemo, you would go in and spend the night in the hospital. He had one chemo that just, it made him so terribly, terribly sick that they changed it to another one. And they ended up doing 3 different kind of drugs on him. It was terribly, terribly hard on his body. And so you can imagine this man is a marathon runner, thin, right? He started this whole journey being really lean, maybe weighing 150 pounds wet. And so this 2-year journey was incredibly devastating to his body. And we had a great support group. He was very fortunate with work that his boss allowed him to take time off when he needed it. But it was an incredibly hard journey. And I know for those of you who've ever been on a cancer journey or who have family or friends, it's your whole world for a long time is treating cancer and living with that and not knowing, am I getting it all? I mean, are we getting it? Right. So at the end of 2 years, they stopped the treatments. They said, we're done. We've done everything we can do. And the last appointment that we had, we actually had gone back we would go back to the oncologist periodically, but pretty much the last appointment with the oncologist before he was released, we were told by the oncologist, and I don't think they would tell you this now, honestly, but he said, you probably are going to get another kind of cancer down the road because you've had so much chemo and radiation. And if you're lucky, you will live 10 years if you're lucky. And that's what we left that office with, those words. And it was pretty devastating because it was like, okay, he's now 40 years old and we still have little kids, and that's it. I mean, that is the answer after all this, after 2 years. So my husband, obviously very wiped out emotionally, physically wiped out. And so I'm a woman of prayer. So I started praying and I was like, Lord, there's an answer to restore this man's body. He's too young. We have little kids. I'm not ready to let him go yet. And there's got to be an answer to restore this body that's just been devastated by cancer and then all the treatments. Well, interestingly enough, 2 weeks later, literally 2 weeks later, I had a friend from church call me and tell me that a clinical nutritionist was coming to town to speak on nutrition. Now, this is in 1984. So, there was no PowerPoint, there was no computers. And so I said, well, I'm all over that. I'm going to come and listen to this guy. And a clinical nutritionist is kind of like saying, you've got an MD and then you've got an RN, right? So a clinical nutritionist is someone who has to pass a board certified clinical state exam. So his name was Dr. Jim McKee, a very brilliant man. And so I went and listened to him that night, and he had a carousel projector, which projected slides up on a screen, but it was the same as like a PowerPoint, right? Where you get good visuals. And here's the most amazing thing. He could have had a topic on any topic, right? I mean, it could have been digestion or something, but that night he was speaking on the role of nutrition and the immune system, which is exactly what we needed to hear. And I'll never forget sitting there and watching those slides. As I watched that immune system, he would show immune system cells just globbing onto a virus or a cancer cell and just like slobbering all over it, and attacking it. And it was just such a visual of what the body could do. And then he talked about all the things the body needed with nutrition in order for the immune system to work correctly. And for me, it was just this literally light went on inside of me. And I thought, I got to know more. I got to know more. And so we made an appointment with this man, Dr. McAfee, and he worked with my husband, started working with my husband. So here's what's amazing is, we're talking a long time ago, right? We're talking almost 40 years ago. We didn't know what we know now in the field of nutrition, and we didn't know the role, for instance, the gut plays in the immune system. And yet that clinical nutritionist started with his gut. He said, we have to heal his gut. It's been damaged tremendously by all the radiation and all the chemotherapy, and we have to make sure he's utilizing the nutrients he's putting in his mouth. And we need to make sure he digests everything, and we need to build up his good bacteria. Well, back then, nobody knew anything about bacteria. So that was the first thing we did. We put him on a gut healing program with, digestive enzymes and probiotics and some pre-digested proteins and things like that, so he could get some protein in the body. We need protein to build immune cells. So we started there, and we noticed right away that he was starting to have more energy, obviously because he was getting more nutrients in the body. And so we got pretty excited. And then he put him on some other things like zinc and B vitamins and vitamin C and some things to give the immune system tools to build up some immune function. When we had left the oncologist's office, the last lab work he had done showed that he didn't have an immune system. I mean, it basically was at the low end of normal, tanked all the way down. And the oncologist said, it's going to take a year, at least a year, to even get up into the normal range. And so don't expect it. You're going to get colds and flus and everything your kids bring home. You're just going to get it. And so you're going to have a really weak immune system. Well, we started him on this program, and then we would go back every 6 weeks for labs. And so we had been on the program 6 weeks and went back and had his lab work done. Now, here's what's amazing is back in the day, right? That's a long time ago. We got a call from the doctor, which you don't ever get, right? You never get that call now, but we got a call from that oncologist, and he said, I just got your labs back. And he said, what have you been doing? And of course, we were freaking out, right? We're thinking, oh no, this is bad, right? He said, we're already seeing your immune system come up into the low end of normal. And in 6 weeks, that's just unheard of. And so you can imagine how excited we were, because we were seeing it on the labs that this was really working. And so, of course, we continued on with what we were doing, and every lab work we would get would be better and better. And he was starting to feel better. He was starting to put on some muscle and some weight back on. And for me, that was the defining moment for me to know what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I had been one of those people who had gone to school. You guys heard this on the other video when we were talking about finding your life path, right? I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know when I went to college. I was just kind of rambling through different kind of courses and not really knowing what I was meant to do and why I was here. Well, this was it. I knew that I needed to learn more. Well, I didn't end up going back to school until I was in my late 40s, but I did go back to school and become a nutritionist because it showed up in my husband's life, and I wanted to share that with other people. I wanted other people to know what could be done through nutrition and the power of nutrition to restore the body. So fast forward, because I've been doing this a long time, right? I'm 72. So much has changed in the field of nutrition, but there's some foundational things that we know that have never changed, right? And so now my husband is 79 years old. He definitely lived longer than 10 years. Yes, he did have some challenges because of all the chemo and radiation. The radiation mostly was the one that really caused him a problem, because it caused heart damage. And later on, when he was in his 60s, had open heart surgery. They did kill his thyroid gland, giving him the radiation. They said they protected it, but they didn't. So, he had to be on thyroid medication, which is fine. A lot of people are. But he's lived a long, healthy life compared to what he was told. So you'll see me post this on the Facebook page sometimes, that a doctor can give you a diagnosis, but don't let them give you a prognosis. Okay. Don't let them tell you you've only got a year to live, or you've only got 5 years to live, or anything like that, because you have so much control over your body and over your ability to be able to fight and restore and regenerate. And the younger you are, obviously, the easier it is. But I want to back up for just a minute here, because with that story, that's a great story. It's an amazing story. It's a big story of hope. And I love to share that story. But we had to kind of evaluate our life. And I think a lot of people do this when they get diagnosed with cancer. All of a sudden, halt, and you start looking at your life. You start evaluating. And we had been married about 14 years, and we both were kind of doing our own thing, right? He would get up and go to work and do his thing. And I would go and do my fitness instructor classes. And, we were just really in our own little worlds, and we were not communicating well. We knew we didn't have things right in our relationship. And so when we had this diagnosis happen, we knew that if we didn't get counseling, we'd never make it through those years. So we started marital counseling pretty quickly after we received the diagnosis. We had to get some things squared away in our relationship to make us through this, right? And so, that was really something that was on the back burner that we weren't paying attention to. We were just living our lives and kind of living in the same house and just kind of getting up and doing our daily thing. And I think that a lot of people do this. And because I know I have clients that I talk to that, we talk about relationships. And so it was not easy. It was not easy to address that in the midst of all of this, but we knew we had to do it. And it was the best thing we ever did. And we continued with that all the way through the 2 years. So we came out the other side much stronger in our relationship than we were when we went into this crisis. And so I encourage you, if you're in any health crisis at all and their relationships that need to be worked on and healed, do it. Don't put it off, because that is such an integral part of who you are. And so we had to deal with that. The other thing was he had a very stressful job that he didn't like. He'd been in this field for a really long time, probably 18 years. And he'd worked his way up into management, which was great, and then he hated it. He hated his job. So, what happened, actually kind of a blessing, 3 years later after the cancer treatment, that company got bought out by another company and they let him go. And it was actually a blessing because he didn't like the job. So, sometimes we're working in a job we hate. I know I have clients like that too. And sometimes it's just like, well, I got to make it to my 20 years to get my, pension or whatever. But man, if you are working in a job every day and you get up and spend 8 hours a day doing something you don't like and you hate, that affects you mentally, emotionally, and physically. And so we know that his body was stressed out from the stress of that job. And stress is a really, really big factor in the immune system. And I want to dive into that a little bit more today. The other thing was that later on, I mean, we're talking a lot later on, about 10 years ago or so, we were introduced to genetic testing. I was actually invited to become a nutrigenomics practitioner, a person who can test genetics and then apply what we see in the genetics and apply nutrition to what we see in the genetics. And so we were when we looked at his genetics, we could see, and even Dr. Stewart went over this with me, and we could see some areas of his, it looks like my internet's a little unstable. We could see some areas of his body where his body was going to really struggle. He was exposed to a lot of pesticides growing up. He worked on his uncle's peach ranch in the summer. And he said, I can remember riding on the back of the tractor and they had pesticides. The arms would spray the trees and you'd wear no mask and you'd just be having the pesticides rain down on you. He was exposed to that when he was younger. And looking at his genetics, his detoxification pathways were really poor. He had a lot of mutations in that pathway. He also had very high inflammation. Your immune system is an inflammation machine. It turns on inflammation to fight a virus or a pathogen or a cancer cell, and then it should shut off. Well, his is on all the time. It just stayed on. So we know there is a connection between inflammation and cancer. We now know that. We didn't know that 40 years ago. But he had a lot of things that would have predisposed him to getting cancer young. And so looking at his genetics, we were able to kind of see it later on in life, which is interesting. We didn't have any big aha moments like, a gene that's definitely a cancer gene. It's just kind of a combination of everything that came. So we have stress, we have relationship stress, we have job stress, we have physical stress. Him running at that level is putting a lot of stress on the body. There's a lot of stress when you exercise. It creates a lot of inflammation in the body, and then the body has to do a lot of repair and maintenance. He probably was overtraining, looking back on it, and not giving his body time to restore and repair. So you have all of this combination, which is like the perfect storm for cancer to take off in the body. And so let's talk about the immune system and stress, because I think this is really important. We live in an incredibly stressful world right now. Obviously, with the wars going on in Ukraine, and now we have Israel, we have a lot of unsettledness in the world. There's a lot of fear. And I think that people also, just again, because I talk to clients one-on-one, I do one-on-one consulting, and I get to see and hear about lives. And I will tell you, there's not too many people that aren't stressed out. It just is a part of life now. It's so incredibly challenging to do the full-time work, the family, the commitments to maybe church or something like that. And it's just go, 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 go. And oftentimes we get ourselves so wound up into this lifestyle that the thought of even doing something like changing the way we eat, right? This is a big thing that Jimmy and I obviously teach and train on, and that it can be stressful. It's like, oh my gosh, it's just so easy to get up and just do everything the way I always do it, right? And so we are always challenging folks when they're going through our program that, this isn't, it's simple because it's simple to pick out different food, but it's not easy. It's not easy because we have patterns and habits that we have been maybe living for a decade, right, or more. And so it's stressful to even change your lifestyle. But let's talk about some of the things we can do to lower stress in the body. First of all, it's important that you undergird your body with some good nutrition. Okay. If you can't get, this ideal diet in every day, that's okay. But you need to have a good, like, foundational multivitamin complex. Here's what I find oftentimes, because people will bring me, actually, I do everything virtual, but they send me their list of supplements that they're taking. And we see this random stuff. I mean, there might be 10 supplements a day, and it's kind of like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's kind of like all over the place. And I'll ask people, well, why are you taking this? Well, because, I read this in a magazine, or I saw this on Facebook, or my friend told me I need to try this, or, you just start to see people adding in kind of randomly this program for nutritional supplements. And there's not a multivitamin or a mineral complex in there anywhere. And so that's the first thing I always do is I pull back and go, okay, let's reevaluate everything. Let's get some good foundational things in here, because nutrition works synergistically. Like, for instance, vitamin A works better with vitamin C. Vitamin A works better with zinc. So we want to have these things all in a good foundational program. So we can put our link in here for a Full Scripts Pharmacy. We have a lot of suggestions in there and different price points for a good multivitamin. You want to get a really good solid foundation. And then you can add in some things, like, say you have inflammation, you want to take some extra omega-3, or maybe you have a history of heart disease and you want some fish oil in there or something like that. But first of all, get a good foundation so your body has the tools it needs in order to fuel that immune system that is going to work hard for you every single day, 24 hours a day. And when we head into the fall, right, this is the kind of the cold and flu month. I've already had a cold. We may need to add in some extra things. And that just reminds me, because I want to let you guys know we're going to be doing an immune boosting program here in not too long. And I absolutely love this program, right? Because this is right up my alley. This is what I just absolutely love. So stay tuned for that, because we're heading into that kind of time of a year where we're going to really need to boost our immune system through the next 4 or 5 months for sure. But let's look at what else do we need? We need sleep. This is another thing. People seem to have a badge of honor. Well, I can get by on 5 hours of sleep. Well, maybe you're getting by, but what's your body doing? It's not time. There's no time to repair and maintenance and all that stuff with lack of sleep. So sleep is really foundational here. So you make sure and get some good sleep. You're not going to get it every single night. You're going to have some times where everything's just wacko. But really, I love just making sure that we have a sleep kind of pattern in our life, right? We don't plan anything late in the evening if we don't have to. We do sometimes, right? Sometimes there's things that make us are out later, but we try to do the same sleep pattern every night. And I think that's really important. It's super important that we don't eat late at night. We don't have caffeine after noon. If you're super stressed out, then at night is the time to just chill for the hour before bed. Maybe take an Epsom salts bath, maybe put on some nice quiet music, unplug from social media and the TV and your phone and all these different things. You need to give your body time to just prepare to sleep. So sleep is super important for your immune system. That's a really foundational thing. Multivitamin, mineral foundation, sleep is foundation. Okay, now stress. Stress is a big one. What I love is to teach people how to do what we call box breathing. And I'm going to do this for you right here, right now, because I want you to see how simple and easy this is. And when I'm feeling really wound up and really stressed out, and I could be in the car, I could be anywhere, right? And I can do this. This is taught to our law enforcement officers, our first responders, our military. They are taught how to do this. My daughter's in law enforcement, and she told me about this. So this is what you do. You inhale really deeply through your nose, and you hold it for 5 seconds, and then you exhale and you push all that air out of your lungs. I mean, you literally push and push and push until there isn't any more air, and you hold for 5 seconds. And then you inhale, do the same thing, and exhale and do the same thing. It takes all of about like what, 20 seconds, maybe something like that. But this shifts your body from what's called the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight nervous system, into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest system. And when we're stressed out, we are in the sympathetic nervous system. We're running on that fight or flight mode all the time. This can shift you like that. It can shift you in a second. Do you know when you're stressed out? Do you know, you remember, I mean, can you feel your brain is just like all over the place? Like you can't focus, and you know, your brain goes from this thought to this thought to this thought to this thought. After you do this breathing technique, your brain literally calms down and you'll be able to focus. So if you're with me live, I want you guys to try this. We have about 5 more minutes left here. I want you to try this. So we're going to inhale through our nose right now. Inhale and hold for 5. And I'll just hold up my hands, right? Here we go. Now, how long did that take? Maybe 30 seconds. It's an amazing technique. So I'm going to encourage you to use that for stress. Okay. It just takes a second. You can do it anywhere. You can quietly do it. Not even anybody would even know you're doing it. Okay. Now, the other thing, I'm going to point you at Jimmy's, his acupuncture practice has a YouTube channel, and he's got a lot more of his biohacking tips on there. He has some great tips for stress on there, and that is Achieve Integrative Health. And maybe we can type that in the feed. Achieve Integrative Health on YouTube. And you can go there and he will show you some of the tips that he does for acupressure that can help with stress, help with the adrenal glands and things like that. And so go check that out as well. Breathing, some of the acupressure tips can help shift you in the moment, right? To get into that parasympathetic mode. Now, finally, let's just decide that we're going to work on one thing. Okay. Again, if you're stressed out, you don't want to overwhelm yourself with trying to do too much stuff at once. And so think about one thing in your life that you know must change, that is so stressful in your life. Don't wait for a health crisis, right? Don't wait for a health crisis for you to just stop in your tracks and go, oh, you know, I need to change some things in my life. Decide today that you are going to work on that one thing. And it may be scary, you guys. If it's relationship wise, it can be scary. If you have to head on, just, you know, tackle a relationship and just say, I'm not happy, this isn't working, we need counseling or whatever, it is the best decision you will ever make. And I know it's scary because I work with clients who tell me this is scary. You know, I have to go home and talk to my husband about this. Yep, you do. Because you can't get well in a body that is stressed out and unhappy in a relationship. So if it's a relationship, maybe it's that you have, I call it your kryptonite food, a food that is kind of like the Superman kryptonite, right? It just takes you out, right? It's something that you know you shouldn't be eating, but you're eating it anyway. You know, it could be stopping at Starbucks, or it could be ice cream in the freezer, whatever. Decide that's going. It's going now. I am taking that out because I know it's the sugar is stressing my body. Sugar is an incredible depressant of the immune system. So whatever it is, make a decision and decide, I am going to tackle this. This is my intention, and I'm going to make a decision, and I'm going to do this. My health is worth it. So remember, health is not just the food that we put in our mouth. The health is the thoughts that we think, the health is the environment that we're in. We've talked about this with some of our guest speakers about, who are you surrounding yourself with? Are they people that are lifting you up? Are they people that are bringing you down? If you need to look for a new job, decide you're going to look for a new job. I know that's crazy, but you spend all of your life working. We spend so much of our life working. It must be something you love. Here I am at 72, and I absolutely love what I do. I don't even want to stop. I don't know when I'm going to stop, but I love what I do. And I was able to find what I loved in my 40s, which is never too late to start again. And I put that post up a couple of times, and people have commented and said, I really needed to hear that. It's never too late to start again. So I wanted to tell you the story today of my husband, because it's a story of hope. That even though he had a really advanced cancer, and he went through really tough chemo, radiation, and surgeries, because of nutrition, we really believe that's why he's here, because we were able to lower the stress in his life with his job, with our relationships. We really prioritized our life, what was most important to us. We really think that's why he's here. So I encourage you, if you're challenged with any health issues right now, again, the doctor can give you a diagnosis, but don't let them give you a prognosis, because I always believe this. I always believe there's an answer. There's an answer for restoring the body. Okay. So that's all I have for you today. I think we're a little bit past 10:30. So hopefully this was inspiring and encouraging for you. And make sure to stay tuned for our moon boosting program. We're really excited about bringing this to you guys in the fall, so that this can be a big help for you going into the new year. All right, you guys have a blessed rest of your day. Bye for now.